Here we go, everybody. Pencil in ear. Boom. On saying no. Now, I said a second ago that this is one of my favorite subjects. And the question is, why is this so difficult for us? Now, I already know that the general answer to that question is because we all understand that when we first start out in this business, even if you're doing it by accident, what's up, Stamp Free? Good to see you. Even if we start out by accident, we don't necessarily realize we're going to be doing this or trying to do it for money. The reality is, totem pole, right? Totem pole, in the metaphorical totem pole of all of the planet for actors. Because again, this is, to me, IG Lives, my YouTube channel, it's global thespians, right? When you look at the totem pole, we, non-celebrities, are the very, very bottom where the lead is, right there. That's it. And so the idea of saying no to anything when we first start out in this profession would be like, no. I'm saying yes to everything. It's like a bad movie with Jim Carrey, only different. So we are so used to saying yes. We're so used to needing to say yes that by the time you're put in the position or put yourself in the position of genuinely, professionally, or personally passing on something. I use the phrase saying no, always have. But of course, in the profession, it is simply called passing. But the difficulty that comes from this is because we spend most of our careers, especially if you don't become a celebrity or a star or really high level within 2 to 4 or 5 years of being in this business, it gets harder and harder and harder to say no because we all know that good representation, terrific auditions, and good projects are hard to come by. That's why. And then here's the other thing, which is my big thing, and this will always be my big thing. And if you've ever wondered, this is a really good example as I go forward with the things that you guys are going to see me do. If you pay attention, you subscribe, you pay attention to the IG Lives, the stuff you're going to see me do, this is the reason why the Actors Network was something that I needed to start, needed to continue, and one of the reasons why it won awards, because of this. There is no class for how to say no. No one ever sat down and talked to us about it. Certainly no one did with me. I've never seen anyone who's covered this subject intelligently other than myself for 3+ decades. And it resonates different in all of us. Why? Because we all have an ego. It's not a bad thing, y'all. It just causes a problem. There's ways about saying no as an actor that I think can even be more challenging than breaking up from an intimate relationship. We struggle deeply with this. We are not good at it, and that's okay. I'm completely comfortable in my life saying things that I'm not inherently good at. I'm fine with it. Let us all just recognize that passing on projects or people or things or saying no as an actor, not one of the things we're real good at. So it's okay that that's the case, but it comes from ego, and it comes from the early part of our career being trained to never say no. You just say yes all the time to everything. I mean, I get it, okay? But this is one of the clarifying things that I want to say because this is such a common thing in life. Now, in the last 15, 20 years, I tend to just say, at the turn of the century, knowing how to place boundaries, language boundaries, with people has become a very common phraseology in life, period. And I want to be clear about something. This is important because this is where Kevin is a very sensitive Pisces, but Hollywood has never offended me. And here it comes. The ability to say no, learning how to say no in every single different scenario you find yourself in is not about boundaries. I'm going to beg you, this is where I'm drawing the line right here. I am going to beg you, what's up Tony Boldy, good to see you, bro. I am going to beg you guys, okay? Beg. This is not about boundaries, because that will over personalize this. And this is our challenge as artists. Okay? This is a professional decision. This is business. This is not personal boundaries. Do not make saying no. I know you can be being emotional, but you have to set it aside and make a professional business decision. Saying no as an actor isn't about setting your boundaries, okay? Don't do that. It is a professional decision, y'all. Please make sure you stay focused on that. So going forward, we have basically about 3 or 4 scenarios in which, thanks, Rennie, I appreciate it. Yeah, the reason I say it, brah, is because, look, man, we're actors. I'm a complete goofball, okay? You know, we use phrases in life like fly off the handle and lose your mind, and we use all these phrases sometimes in office settings or certainly with friends, or, you know, we use the word crazy or inappropriate or all these things that are some form of emotional dogma that we deal with within ourselves. And I'm telling you, one of the reasons why it's imperative to me that actors get really good at learning how to say no isn't because it's something you're going to do all the time, man. I don't say no all the time. I just learned a long time ago that learning how to do it within this industry, not other industries, this industry, was simply part of what I call my professional toolbox. It is simply a tool that I have got to have and that you have to use when it's necessary. And while there are various reasons, there are really in general, there are 3 or 4 main reasons we tend to have to say no or pass on something. And one of those is representation. I'm going to cover them all, okay? One of them is some kind, and I'm saying this, I'm trying to be broad with this word, some kind of project. It could be an indie, could be something involving a friend, it could be a lot of that. It also could be what we would then call something that's paid for, a legitimate project. And then sometimes you can run up against simply the conversation related to passing on an actual audition, or if you're a union member, somebody trying to get you to do something non-union. These are a lot of the reasons why we have to say no. So let's address the first one that is the most common first. And that is the one that I found is most common, maybe it's not for you, is when you have more than one meeting, which I always want you to have, and you have more than one representative who wants to represent you. First and foremost, I love this scenario. Carla Vega is in the house. Good to see you, love. I love this scenario. Remember, I've had 46 representatives, right? I currently have 47 and 48. Maybe someday I'll bump it up to 47x. You never know. But if you imagine that I've had 46, imagine how many meetings I've had. And because I'm such a huge advocate of not having just one meeting, but having multiple meetings. Good to see you too, love. There's going to be a time, if you give good office, if you're somebody who is someone who's going to give a really good interview and have likely more than one person want to represent you, you're going to have to say no. And here's my thing to you. If you're in this business long enough, and maybe somebody watching this or someone here has not experienced this yet, but if you haven't yet, please know the folks on the other side of the desk, agents and managers, they have no problem passing on you, okay? They may regret it one day. You may tell them that you may want to tell them they're going to regret it one day. But I assure you, there's no representative that has existed anywhere ever who's able to say yes to everybody they interview. It's impossible. So, yes, they carry more power at the moment in that time, but they're all good at saying no to you, to me, to us. So you have to get intelligent about how you pass. This is why, to me, when you go into a meeting, You don't ever jump when somebody says, hey, let's do this. Hey, let's work together. I recommend, even if you don't have another meeting, I will always recommend to you that you go into any representation meeting as if you have a couple of meetings lined up. And that you're able to say to them early on, I'm meeting with, I have some meetings pending, I'm going to make a decision. Have a date already in your head. Probably not more than 5 to 8 business days away, so that it stays within what we would call a 2-week period of time. And if it comes to pass, and if the scenario I just described, whether you invented it or whether it's actually the truth, I don't care. This is not about lying, guys. This is about protecting the process of passing. That's what this is about, okay? Hey, Ilana. No matter what the scenario is, when you give yourself time from the moment you're sitting in the room and you don't feel pressure to go, they say they want to represent you, go, okay, like, dog losing his mind, right? Okay, as long as you don't do that to yourself, give yourself time. Because when it's all said and done, all you're going to say to someone is, thank you very much for your time and interest. This is a profession, it's a business. At this moment in time, I'm going to go another direction, but I really appreciate you being willing to see me and being interested in representing me. There's always the possibility down the line that things may change for us both, and one day I may request to knock on your door again. Now, we all understand, and I know how this works. Our brain thinks to ourselves, if you write that to someone, their attitude is going to be, yeah, I get it, and I don't care. Because you can't control someone else's petty ego. You cannot do it. You can't. You can't do it. Here's the other thing. Let's pretend the agency or management company you're passing on has 3 or 4 representatives in it. Let me assure you something. You're saying no to the company. You're not saying no to one individual. And don't ever forget, no matter where you are, Paris, London, Sydney, Melbourne, I say this in all of my IG lives. These cities function the same. The individuals that are at that company, guess what? 3 years from now, one of those individuals may not be there anymore. They may be someplace else. Matter of fact, you know what? They may leave the company you turned down and come to the company that you chose to be with. Now, do you want to have something that's less than professional on your resume in their mind with them? Because I assure you, if the scenario that occurred, and it happens, that I just described happened, that individual who left the place you turned down and goes to the place where you currently are that you chose over them, when you talk to them, you know what they'll say? Thanks for being professional. There's a chapter in my book that says to be a professional. This is to be a professional, is to thank someone for their time and their interest, and perhaps a scenario will be different down the road, but at this time, I am going to go another direction. Thank you. That is all. And my point to you and why I said this is not about personal boundaries is because of this. When you make that decision, hey, Cassandra, happy Monday. When you make that decision, you have to move on and let it go instantly. That does not mean that all those people who met with you and all those people who saw you aren't on your master contact list. Of course they are. They're people you've engaged with, and you should always remember that. But there's nothing wrong with saying no. Somebody who wants to, as I say all the time, if somebody who wants to act like they're going to be a petty crybaby about it, like they're in high school, you can't change that. You can't change it. You can't do anything about it. And most of all, you can't worry about it, and you can't carry it with you. I don't care how old you are. If you think what I'm describing is something that an actor succumbs to or has difficulty with just because they're 17 or they're 14 or they're 22, bullshit. This is one of the great things about my history with the actors that work. I saw people in their 50s and 60s who'd been doing this profession for 2 and 3 decades struggle with this. This is not an age maturity thing. This is how you're wired mentally about this profession thing. So please learn it, understand it, know how to put it forth. When it comes time that you have to do that with a representative, do it and move on. What you don't ever do is you don't ever ghost somebody. Don't apologize in your passing, in your language. Don't apologize. Don't say, I'm sorry, but no. This is what I'm saying. This is why this is not personal boundaries, man. This is a professional decision. And just so you know, at the upper echelon of Hollywood, metaphorically across this globe, this happens every single week. Somebody is going, thanks, but no thanks, all the time. This is common, normal business. And the sooner that can not just be something you learn from Kevin E on an IG Live or from some future thing that we do, not just because you know it, because it literally is cellular through you, because that's the only way you're going to be able to type it and write it very simply and move on from it when it's done. And I beg you to do that sooner than later. Now, let's move on to turning down a project of some kind. I'm a huge advocate. Everybody knows this about me. I'm a huge advocate of utilizing the independent sort of craziness of the digital world we live in, where there's auditions for everything all the time. I'm a huge advocate. Have been for 20 plus years of going on all the auditions you can go on all the time, but learning how to say no. Why? Okay, let's pretend a friend asks you to do a project. Let's say somebody of yours becomes the artistic director at a theater and they want you to do a show. We're not good at saying no. But there are times, 1,000,000,000%, when you need to learn how to pass professionally on a project. So I'm going to say a couple simple things about all of those little scenarios surrounding a project that I just brought up. Okay? And that is this. Who's your audience? Who's the person that you're talking to? Okay? Hey, Mickey. Who's the person? Do you know them? If you know them, is this somebody you would want to work with? That's got to be one of the first things that you ponder. Is if you know enough about somebody, what is their organization? What is their professionalism? What is their history? Do they have any business doing this? This is an old phrase I used to use all the time, and I still use it to this day, which is, this is not a lemonade stand, y'all. This is not being 8 years old on a Sunday and just burning some time, selling cups of lemonade from some powder and shit for 50 cents because you're just burning a Sunday. That's not what this is. So just saying yes to a project because a buddy is doing it, it's not a good reason. Please assess the project and assess all of the communication done by the production side of things. And yes, does it get harder if it's someone you know? Of course it gets harder. But sometimes you just got to say no. And once again, it's the same thing. Now, you can try to invent excuses. I'm not a big advocate of lying. Not a liar in my life. I get it. For example, I am literally leaving town tonight. That's the truth. However, what I found when it's not personal, a project that involves someone I know personally, this is the best play. I love using the platform to be really good at auditions, and then all of a sudden they want to cast you, and you're really not interested in doing the project for whatever reason. They sound organized on the phone, disorganized on the phone. They don't know how to communicate on email. These are all things that are going to tell you this production is liable to go sideways. But here's your out. Your out can always be, because you don't know if they're going to be interested in you, right? Whether they come back in 24 hours or 2 weeks. And just say to them, listen, I'll just understand that I now have looked at your production dates, and I am going to have some personal scheduling challenges within those production dates. And so the smartest thing for me to do is to not put you in the position of me saying yes now and then having a problem later once we're already committed in the production. So I'm just going to pass. I use the scope, and always have, of their production schedule as something that's likely to be a problem for me that I can't get around. And that's the reason I'm going to pass. It's that simple. You're going to save them the trouble. Okay? Now, when someone claws and tears at you, it gets harder to hold that line. But if you have the internal vibe and belief that this production, the people in charge seem to be really disorganized, or you don't really want to do the character, or maybe you've asked them some questions about safety or stunts or nudity or anything else that may be a problem, and you didn't get kind of the clarity you wanted, and that's the reason you're going to pass, cool, I'm all for it. I recommend you use the production dates and a potential conflict that you can't get out of as your reason for passing. If it is someone that you know who's doing any kind of a project that they want you to be a part of, one of the better outs, if you have a representative, is to potentially use, again, good cop, bad cop, use your representative based on the kind of project that it is to say that you guys have a strategy and the project doesn't really fall into the purview of what they want you spending your time on. And or it can also be that maybe, again, this is based on the size of the role, how many days, what kind of contract. There's a lot of things for you to consider, especially when it's a personal project. But time and focus are always, and have been for years for me, one of the reasons why I have passed on things. And believe me, there are things, plenty of things, guys. And when you do want to do the character, absolutely, Merrick. And we run that risk sometimes. Sometimes the character is so intriguing to us, and all the signs are there that this is going to be a shit show of a production, or whatever it may be. And sometimes you roll the dice and you get lucky, and sometimes you roll the dice and it was a shit show. But here's the point, Merrick, and thank you for saying that, because this makes my point. My biggest thing always will be this, guys. It's always this. That's why you see on my YouTube channel a playlist that says Inner Cues, K-E-W, Inner Cues. Because psychologically, when the project's over, do you spend the next 4 to 8 weeks being depressed, being down, being frustrated, beating yourself up? This is what we can't have. If you make a choice and it's a bad choice, show up 100%, be a professional when it's over with, done, move on. This is hard for us. Guys, I'm a Pisces. But that's the point, Merrick, is sometimes you say yes, but at the end of the day, what's going to happen when you do that enough, you're going to have to learn how to say no. And use the production dates to do it. And if it's a friend, you can utilize the focus that your representation wants you to stay on, and or time and focus of other things. There are plenty of things in my life that I wish I had said no to at the time that I didn't. And there are a handful of things in my life that I may have skipped over, I wish I would have said yes to. What I don't do is, I don't worry about them at this point. I just learn from it, okay? I just learn. Now, I have to address turning down an audition. And I'm going to do it very fast because it's very simple. We don't tend to turn down auditions, and I'm an advocate of it. However, if you are someone who works a lot commercially and you really don't want to audition for regional spots, you shouldn't have to ever turn this down. You should never have to say no. You should have a conversation with your representative, and the representative should understand that you've reached a certain place and you simply don't audition for regional spots. That's up to your representative, not you. You should not be stuck in the middle of that. Make sure you communicate with your representative. If you're talking about saying no to an audition for a particular legitimate project, and typically these days that would be television, this is what I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to give you one real life example. Some of you are too young to even remember this, but there used to be a show on television called Ally McBeal with Callista Flockhart, okay? And this was one of the early times in my career where I had to learn, nope, because the audition was for a role that was too small based on what I had been working hard to do to build up to. And what I know is this, and I learned it the hard way by not saying no when I should have, which is if you are working towards building up to doing guest star work only and above, you can't keep saying yes to co-stars. And this is the reason in legitimate television to pass on an audition. It's not about the role, it's not about the character, it's not about the money, it's not about working, it's not about any of those things. It is about sticking to the corporate ladder of growing your resume in a particular direction to change your career. And it's hard. And I remember the conversation with my agent going, it's a pretty popular show. You sure you want to turn this down? Yes, I'm sure. I am not doing it. That's how it goes. And man, is it freaking hard. But I'm just telling you, I used to say this all the time about under fives on daytime television. We don't live in that world anymore. You guys don't live in a world where there's 6 or 7 daytime shows in Los Angeles. But I used to tell people all the time, I said, if you do one under 5 on one daytime show, you're never going to do a principal on any of the other daytime shows ever. And it's true. It's like, oh, well, this person is only an under 5 actor, so that's all we're going to call them in for. That's not fair, but life ain't fair. I'm just telling you that's how billing works. And so to me, the only real time you should be turning down a legit audition for something, especially in mostly television, is that you have gone beyond where you are. I mean, I could work every single week. I literally could work every week in this profession if I was willing to drop my career. I just won't do it. I'm okay with not working. That's a choice. I'd made it a long time ago. But you're going to have, this is why you have to have conversations with people. And sometimes you say yes to something that would be a co-star, but it's because it's a different medium. And I'll give you an example. I don't have a lot of half-hour comedy in the history of my career, even though I was a stand-up comic. And so if it was a top show, and I'm going to give you the example of Modern Family, and Modern Family wanted to have me do a 4-line co-star that I was going to be with Eric Stone Street and the crazy gal, fun gal, I would say yes, because it's a different area of industry, and the entire comedy planet would see it. So there's an example of where I would say no to a drama based on my resume. I'd say yes to half hour with a smaller billing because of the area of industry. But nonetheless, the only time you would pass on a legit television audition is for that reason. And it's really hard sometimes, specific. Oh yeah, no, it is, Merrick. Okay, so now if we have any questions, I want to make sure I save the last couple of minutes for any questions. But I do want to mention this. If you're in a situation where you're happy to do the project, any project, and it looks like from the outside to you that they could cross over, once you become active, this is going to happen a lot. And one episode shoots, and the crossover dates of the episodes are the same, or maybe the play is going to this, or the independent feature is going to be that. This is the recommendation. Do not presume a negative before the difficulty happens, okay? This is my recommendation. Don't pass on something just because it looks like that if you book it, it is going to conflict with something else that you might book. In both those scenarios, they're both mights. I don't care if it's commercial. I don't care what it is. Go on the auditions, have people want to hire you, and let your representation work out the scheduling. And if, and it happens, it turns out that you have to pass on one of them, guys, the greatest reason to say no in the history of the planet is because your individual human self can't be at 2 jobs in 2 different places at the same time. So don't say no ahead of time just because it looks like there might be a conflict, or even such as going out of town. This is a non-refundable trip that I'm on. That's why you book out. But you still don't say no just because you don't know. Maybe out of the 8-day schedule for a television show, you're only going to work 2 days, and they're the 2 that you're available. Don't presume the negative of scheduling conflicts and say no and pass before you know you are wanted and hired and know some details about your actual shooting schedule. So with that said, does anybody have a question about how to say no? Because when it's all said and done, this stuff becomes pretty easy once you have to do it a few times. I promise. I don't want you to make an unnecessary habit of it. I just want you to be really good at it. More notably, I'm even going to pass on the word good. What I want people to do is I want you to be psychologically, the best thing that I can say at the end, I want you to be psychologically and professionally comfortable doing it. Okay, here's the question. So for TV, you have this talk with your agent before you would see the type of audition. Like no co-star. Well, yeah, Lalana, if you're getting to the place, just pretend. I always use this number. Good question. Let's say you've done 10 co-stars at this point in your life and career. You should have a strategic conversation with your agent and manager about if and when they're going to continue to submit you for a co-star and how they're going to go about only submitting you for one-day guest stars or guest stars that would be top of show on, say, a show that's maybe on the way out or ratings aren't good, etc. Yes, you should be having a billing strategy submission work conversation with your representative. Absolutely 1,000,000,000%. And when you have that with your representative, if you ever change representatives, you will learn to have that conversation before you even go into being represented by them. Everything in life is, what is your bar? And when your bar changes in this profession because you've worked, and I would never let, if I was an agent, I would never let a client do more than 10 co-stars, ever. Because at that point, it's like, no. If you keep doing them, you're never going to get a guest star. And because we have this goofy, stupid, in my opinion, one-day guest star contract, that's how you start to transition up to top of show, guest star recurring, and series regular. And again, depends on the areas of industry. You could have 3 half-hour co-star credits on really top, great half-hour funny shows, and those 3 jobs could potentially get you an audition for a series regular. There's no black and white rules to it. But yes, you would actually. Okay, Cassandra, you get the last question because I'm now a minute and a half over. I think I may have missed, but do you need to say no after a meeting with a potential? Oh, yes, Cassandra, I covered all of that. And so I can't repeat it at this point, this long in. But as soon as I post this live, go back and watch it because how to say no on a rep was the first scenario that I covered, okay? I promise. It's all there. All right, guys. We are right up at 2 minutes over. And I don't want to hold anybody up. And you guys have a great rest of your week. Thanks for being here. This is awesome stuff. Please tell your friends. Go to the YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe. Do all that. Thank you very much. And we will see you guys next Monday, the 25th. Have a great week. Bye.